Okay, welcome back. And today we're going to start with chapter 5. And chapter 5 is a very interesting chapter because this is something that you guys may be considering for your future. And it's talking about small businesses, entrepreneurship, and then franchising. Now, this slide basically talks about how the great entrepreneurs, how many they had and where they started. So like Walt Disney, of course, was Walt Disney. I'm trying to find some of them that you guys would know. Microsoft, Bill Gates started in his garage. Ben and Jerry's, where they started. 23andMe. So these are just some of the ones that are the most well known of entrepreneurs. All right, let's start off by talking about entrepreneurship. And entrepreneurship is the process of creating and managing a business to achieve your desired objectives. Now, as an entrepreneur, you're going to have risk of your wealth, your time, and your effort. You got to be willing to put in the time. So it's not going to fall in your lap. Most people work years and years and years before their business explodes. In our world today, many new small businesses are merging. Now, this is something that is a new terminology. It's called micro entrepreneurs, and those are entrepreneurs who develop that business with 5 or fewer employees. And how they do that, of course, is technology. They do it on websites, podcasts, online videos, of course, media. So it's easier now to operate a small business with a smaller amount of people. And then a new growing trend is social entrepreneurs. And those are those individuals who use entrepreneurship to address social problems. And one thing that you want to always keep in mind, if you are thinking, when I graduate from Reinhardt in 4 years or 3 years, however long you have, because this is an intro class, so I'm assuming most of you are freshmen. So when you graduate and you say, I want to open up my own small business, or you may even want to open it up while you're in college, look at the SBA, the Small Business Administration. They offer managerial and financial assistance. Now, what is considered to be a small business? We define it as an independently owned and operated business that is not dominant in its competitive area or industry, and it will never employ more than 500 people. When you get over 500 people, then you're not considered a small business anymore. The definition is similar to the one used by the Small Business Administration, an independent agency of the federal government that offers managerial and financial assistance to small businesses. They work with women-owned businesses. They have more than 10 million businesses nationwide that they have assisted. And again, they use professional services, retail, communication, administrative services. They're not going to give you money. You can sometimes get a small business loan, but they're going to kind of direct you where you need to go in order to get your financial footing and know that you know what to do, your articles of incorporation and things like that. Another thing that you want to look at is minority-owned businesses are growing really fast, and they represent 30% of all small businesses. As you can see for this table 5.2, this is just giving you some statistics about the importance of small businesses. And I'm not going to sit here and read them. You can look at it and kind of see if this is something that interests you. This is just a graph that kind of shows you where you can look at for small businesses. Wholesale trade, again, manufacturing is not as much because of the cost of equipment. If you're in manufacturing, you got to have some serious backing. Real estate, fishing and hunting, and of course, healthcare. All right, industries that are going to attract a small business. Retailing. Of course, we all know, stores, TJ Maxx wouldn't be. A boutique over at the mall. Wholesaling provides goods and services to produce and retailers. Of course, services, nail salons, hair salons, massages, different things like that. Now, manufacturing has a unique opportunity for small businesses, and what it would be like customizing products for customers. I know a gentleman at church has a woodworking, and he's already retired, and he got into woodworking, and so he has the equipment. It's not like the big equipment, but he builds products. He builds bird houses, he builds tables and things like that. So and he customizes it to what the customer wants. And then of course, high technology. Those are businesses that depend on scientific and engineering, but they are going to require greater capital and higher startup cost. The sharing economy is an economic model that involves sharing of underutilized resources, renting out lodges or vehicles. I would assume that would be like an Airbnb or VRBO. I did not realize you could rent your vehicles, but now you can. It would be like renting one of those scooters in Atlanta. It is called a gig economy because your independent contractors earn income from going job to job. But there's a lot of regulatory challenges that are faced if that's the field you want to go into. Oh, this is one of those little things I was talking about. Bird, lime, lift, and spin. There are electric scooters. And so what they do is they pay people to collect, recharge, and distribute the scooters on a daily basis. Table 5.3 are some traits that have been discovered with young entrepreneurs that are very successful. And if you will look at the traits, they're intuitiveness, productive, resourcefulness, charismatic, innovative, risk takers. And that's probably one of the most important ones because you have to be able to hold on when you feel like that you're getting ready to fall, persistent, and then being friendly. Okay, so let's look at some of the advantages of a small business. You have independence. You can do this on your own. You can stay with your employer and do this on your off time at night and the weekends. You can choose who you want to work with. You have the flexibility of when and where you want to work, and it also can be done in a family setting. The cost of a small business ownership, you're going to spend less money on wages or paying other people, rent, and utilities. Because if you're like Bill Gates or some of the others that started in your parents' garage, I'm sure they're not going to charge you rent. You can use extra, if you're not good at some of these fields like accounting, advertising, or the legal aspects, you can hire external firms. You can hire someone to come in and do that for you. And it's very interesting. Friends and family are going to volunteer to help you with your business. Also, you have flexibility. Because of the small size, if there's a change in the market, you can make it quicker. You can change quickly so that you can keep up with the market demands versus a corporation where it has to flow all the way down. You can focus precisely on your market niche, and we will be going into that in what a market niche is in the next unit. Your reputation, you can develop reputation for quality and service. People are going to want you to do things well. They do great work. You want to use them. But there are disadvantages of small businesses. Very, very high stress level. More than likely, it is going to provide a minimal living for you as the owner, but until it gets off the ground, you're not going to be rolling in the dough. You're always going to be worrying about competition, your employee problems. What kind of equipment do I need? What inventory? Rent, and rent is just going out the skyrocketing. Or even, what if I've got a market and then there's a changing in the market demand? Now, I want to stop here because I want to talk about this. Do you remember, and this would be probably in most of your generations, you had the bands that people wore, I can't even remember what they were called, but they were the bands. And so maybe you were the person that invented those and you started selling them. Well, I mean, it just went wild and everybody wanted these silly bands, I think is what they called them. And so market was just flooded with them. And then as soon as they were on the market, they were off the market. So if you are not ready to create a new product, then you're sitting there with millions of silly bands in inventory and nothing to do with them. As the owner, you're usually everything. You're what's considered the jack of all trade. You're the manager, your sales, your shipping and receiving. You're the bookkeeper, you're the custodian. You have to clean the toilets. And so, meaning you're going to be using long hours. There's a high failure rate in small businesses. Most are going to fail within 5 years. The shortest path to failure is going to be undercapitalization, which means you don't have the lack of funds to operate your business normally. Too many entrepreneurs think about, all I need is the money to get started. Then they get in the middle of their business and they don't have any money. A lot of small business owners have no managerial experience and they're very incompetent. Not all entrepreneurs are good managers. Not all managers are good leaders. And then inability to cope with growth, just kind of what I was talking about, that as an owner, you might have to give up an amount of direct authority and let people help you. Again, going back to those silly bands, you have millions of silly bands products to ship out and you don't know how to do it. All right, so now let's move to the section on how to start a small business. And what you want to do is you want to start with your concept or your idea. You want to devise a strategy. What am I going to do by planning and developing? One of the most important things I've always said is the first thing you have to know is, what type of an organization am I going to be? Am I going to be a sole proprietor? Am I going to be a partnership? Am I going to be an S corporation, or am I going to be an LLC? So you've got to know that. Where my money coming from? You know, I may have $10,000 in the bank and think, wow, I can start a business. That $10,000 will be gone in the first week. Are you going to start your own business? Are you going to buy a business? So you have to think about that. Maybe you even just want to be a franchise. After you've kind of started and you've kind of got the plan in your head and you know what kind of business you're going to be, then you want to start thinking about one of the most key elements to the success of your business is a business plan. It is a precise statement, and it's not just one page. It is page after page after page, because in order to borrow money, you have to have a business plan. And I think our book kind of goes into what is involved in a business plan. But it's a step-by-step explanation of how you are going to achieve the goals of your business. It's an explanation of your business. What is your business, and what are you going to produce or service you're going to provide? You got to know what your competition is and who your competition is. You have to identify those. You got to know how much income you have coming in, how much you are estimating to go out. And then you have to have a strategy to acquire funds to keep your business going. There are going to be hills up and down. And your business plan needs to be revised periodically. You need to every year look at it and say, okay, I need to do this, I need to do that. Starting a small business. Again, here are the forms of business. Then you have to look at final resources. As the owner, you are required to, or you are responsible for providing or obtaining money, and it's always considered, when you're talking about in a business plan, capital. That is the money to get started and to keep it running. You got to rent a space. You got to purchase everything you need. You got to buy your capital, and then you got to have capital for working. So when we're talking about starting your small business, you've got to have equity financing. And what you as an owner are going to do is you're going to use your real personal assets rather than borrowing funds from outside sources to get started. So that can be your own money. It can be your parents giving you money, but it's personal assets rather than going to the bank and borrowing money. That's equity. I've got equity in my house, so I'm going to use that to start my business. You can also obtain funds by finding investors and selling stocks. Now, a venture capitalist are people or organization that agree to provide some funds for a new business in exchange for ownership, interest, or stock. And it does require that you share your profits with the business of investors. And when you think of venture capitalist, think about Shark Tank. That's exactly what they are. They are going to give you, they're going to provide you money to help you get your business off the ground or grow it, but they're not doing it out of the goodness of their heart. They're doing it to see what kind of money that you can make them. All right, debt financing is sometimes when you borrow more than half of your financial resources, and your banks are going to be your main suppliers, or you can go to the federal level, and the Small Business Administration offers some financial assistance if you qualify. Family and friends as a source for long-term loans. but you want to have in writing an agreement of how you're going to pay them back. Are they going to get money from profits or however? Um, I would all be really careful from borrowing money from friends and family. That's going to lead to a lot of heartache. Collateral is financial interest in property or fixtures of the business. So you're saying, I'm putting this up for collateral. All my cars that own the company, say for instance, you have a rental car business, and so you're putting up as collateral the cars themselves. Of course, you can put a mortgage, which is personal property. You can put your house up as collateral as part of your mortgage. You can establish a line of credit, and that's when you go to your bank and you say, okay, if you'll give me $100,000 as a line of credit, every time I need this, then I can just get that sum amount on demand. Trade credit allows businesses to take possession of needed goods and service and pay later at a date on installments. That one's kind of iffy again. And then again, bartering, we've talked about that in a couple of chapters ago. You're trading your products for goods and services of other businesses. All right, starting a small business. If you're starting from scratch versus an existing business, an existing business is going to have built-in customers. When you buy an existing business, you already have the customers, and hopefully they're going, and then who your suppliers and everything are. That's like a hair salon. If you buy a hair salon that someone else has owned and they're retiring or they're just tired of doing the business, most of the time the customers are going to stay with the business. It will reduce some of the guesswork, but you also then are taking on problems that business already had. Franchise, we talked about over in Unit 1. The franchise is a license to sell another's product or use their name in the business. The company that sells the franchise is called the franchisor. The purchaser is called the franchisee. So remember, franchise is the license, franchisor is the company that sells the franchise, and franchisee is the purchaser. So McDonald's, all right, they sell their license to set up a business. The company that sells the franchise is the franchisor, and then the McDonald's in Canton is the franchisee. These are some of the advantages and disadvantages of starting your own small business. Here are some of the fastest growing franchises: Supercuts, which is a hair salon; Cruise Planners; Taco Bell; Planet Fitness. We have one of those in Canton. Of course, used to be Dunkin' Donuts, now it's Dunkin'. And then Goosehead Insurance. I see one of those. I believe there was one in downtown Waleska. I don't know that it is still there. Again, starting, where do you go? And so there's some, if you want to be an entrepreneur, there's some training programs. You're going to have to do some different things. There's publication as that you can get, Inc. and Entrepreneur. Then, of course, you have the small business development centers, and they're clinics that usually located on campus colleges. I don't think we have one of those at Reinhardt. And what they do is they're going to provide counseling at no charge, and training, if you want training, just at a very nominal fee. The Service Corps of Retired Executives, which is listed as SCORE, and the Active Corps of Executives, which is known as ACE, are volunteer agencies that are funded by the SBA, and they provide advice to small business owners. The SBA has organized the Small Business Institute on almost 500 university and college campuses in the United States. So if you're interested, Google it. You probably would find one down at Kennesaw State or at Georgia State, some of your larger universities. Then there's some demographic trends that you want to look at. Of course, baby boomers consist of 75 million Americans. Although most baby boomers may be wealthy, many of you small businesses don't actively pursue that group. But the areas that you would want to look at: travel, financial planning, and healthcare. Anything in the healthcare industry would grow as boomers age. Then the millennials and Generation Y are about 83 million. And what that group is concerned with is advancement, recognition, and how to improve capabilities. Then you have your Generation Z, which a lot of you might fall into. That accounts for 61 million. And your goal is seeking fun with flexible work environment. One of your untapped markets is the immigrants. Then, of course, you've got some technological and economic trends. And, of course, internet is just so many opportunities available, exports into services, but you have to be careful of economic turbulence. It can be both an opportunity or a threat, so you have to be react quickly to change and stay close to your customers. And this is just internet information. And the last slide is making businesses act small. And that's continuing success and competitive of small businesses. Large firms want to emulate smaller ones to improve the bottom line by downsizing, reducing those management layers, corporate staff, and work. So what they want to do is they want to make firms more flexible, resource, and innovative. Then you have entrepreneurs. Now, in major corporation, entrepreneurs like entrepreneurs. Remember, entrepreneurs are usually individuals. Entrepreneurs take responsibility for, or they even could champion the development of innovations of any kind within a larger organization. So they're not doing it for themselves, they're doing it for the organization. So that ends our second chapter in this group for Unit 2. And lastly, we're talking about e-commerce. And of course, e-commerce has exploded. Most of us are going to use e-commerce platforms such as Spotify, Wix, or Squarespace to allow your business to go online.